Good day, everyone. Good morning for those who are in Africa and the Middle East, and good day for those who are in the rest of the world, whatever the time zone is. And I'm so glad to have Chrisna Swart again in this third episode, talking about the neuroscience coaching and coming from Neurozone and with the model of, Neurozone that put for neuroscience assessments and the resilience researches that they had for teams and individuals. I believe that there are great insights when it comes to the team, the high performance for the teams. And today we will talk about mindfulness. Hi, Chrisna, how are you?
I'm good, thank you, Mohammed. Great to be back. Thank you.
Despite being in the same time zone, but we're in two different, weathers on the same continent.
Yes, Cape Town is trying to be in spring, but we are not there yet. It's still a bit chilly in the air, but we're hoping to see some warm weather soon.
Yeah, and in Cairo here in Egypt, it's a bit. This summer was not serious as every other summer, so we had only 2 hot weeks, but the rest of the weeks were almost, very, very moderate weather, which is not the normal here in Egypt, So there is something that's happening in the global setup here.
Yes, that we are sure of. Right. I wanted to talk about this interesting topic of mindfulness, which I think has gotten renewed attention in the last few years, especially. So I'm happy to be here and talk a little bit about mindfulness from a neuroscience perspective, and also what the benefits and value of that would be for teams and organizations, which is a big focus point at Neurozone at the moment, as well as our high performance team assessments that we have, and just looking at what behaviors we can cultivate, behavioral states, mood states, and cognitive states and emotional states that really build our resilience for high performance. And that's what Neurozone is all about. So happy to be here. Thanks.
Thank you, Chrisna. And I would actually want to take this moment actually to celebrate that we had the first team assessment here in Egypt using the Neurozone team report, and it was really very insightful. And the team had much deeper conversations. They used to have another contractor for team assessments before, and when they used our assessment, they saw many, blind areas they never tapped into before. And when they related this to the research done with Neurozone and with the pains that they're having, they had very much structured way of looking at the problems and the challenges and finding solutions for it and having better conversations to get solutions for it. So it was, it summarized a lot of pains that were unspoken, untold, and reprioritized their internal projects on how to handle their internal issues. And I want to thank Neurozone for that, because it was a real insightful report using the great model that you have.
Wonderful, thanks. Thank you, Sheila. Yeah, I think what's important to understand is that what we do at Neurozone is really looking at daily habits, daily behaviors, the way we think, the way we look at things, and how that actually impacts our level of resilience for high performance. Because in the end, the brain unconsciously, the brain just wants to keep you alive, help you survive. And when those boxes are ticked, we can look into thriving. And when you look at our model as well, our whole model works from basic to sophisticated. So looking at those foundational drivers of brain performance, first and foremost, which would be, exercise, nutrition, and sleep. And what's interesting is that mindful meditative practice actually forms part of our foundational drivers of brain performance, which we call high performance rhythms. So setting aside time every single day for mindful meditative practice is how you start getting yourself more fit. We'd like to call it mindful fitness almost, right? Because what you would like to cultivate in the end is mindfulness as a trait. It's like, when you want to be fit with exercise, you're going to have to exercise every week, and only then you can have that fitness. And that's the same with mindfulness, and how I'd like to position it today as well, is you have to have that set practice of mindfulness as part of your foundation, as part of, your what keeps you alive and help you to survive. And over time, by practicing it often enough, you become more fit. It means you start cultivating mindfulness as a trait, which also falls then under our high performance transformers, because when you start cultivating mindfulness as a trait, it really transforms your mindset, because we have to look at how it activates the brain. And I think as a starting point, it's important to position mindfulness, in the sense of, in the past, still today in the West, many people associate it with Eastern religious practices. And yes, for sure, it does fall part of many of those. But I think from a neuroscience perspective, we've evolved so much in understanding what actually happens in the brain when we do practice mindfulness, to understand that there are so many benefits. And it's really about brain activation, and how it activates your brain. I think many people would say mindfulness changes your brain, but the truth is everything you do changes your brain. I hope even listening to this interview today changes your brain a little bit. I think the key lies in understanding how it changes your brain and what these benefits actually are, and how can organizations start accessing this as a very critical tool for high performance and for building resilience.
I really love how you articulated this part of how you cultivate mindfulness, and when mindfulness comes in, in the discussions of organizations and corporates, everybody looks at this guru on the mountain, like who's just sitting there, like in the Eastern, as you said, context, like you sit there, you just sit, relax, and breathe, and just and actually leaders come back to you and tell you, we don't have time for this, whatever, and there is truth, just, so in a way, they mindfulness is always associated currently, when we're talking about it, with yoga, meditation practices that are actually coming in from the Eastern context, while you're saying a lot of tips on cultivating, and this brings us to the how of how teams and organizations can cultivate, and leaders cultivate mindfulness in their daily rituals and in the organization rituals that brings all people together towards high performance and resilience. So
I think before we get to the how, I think perhaps just a moment on the why it's important and what actually happens in the brain, to understand, what the benefit of this is. From a coaching perspective, and considering that we are moving into a space where we're cultivating leaders as the coaches of their teams as well, right? So speaking to both the leader and the coach, mindfulness is the sea that everything swims in. When you want to work towards transformation and change, you can only change what you're aware of. So we've been given this wonderful time-traveling brain, which is evolved for our survival that way, because we have to think about past mistakes, right, to learn from them. And we have to plan for the future. So we have to be able to time travel in our heads, back to the past and into the future, as part of our survival strategy. But what we find today is we spend most of our time traveling. And when you look in an fMRI scan of someone's brain, when you ask them, think about a regretful past event or a stressful future event, the brain lights up in a very interesting way. It lights up beyond just the access of a memory. It lights up in a way as if that is happening to you in that moment. So what the brain thinks, the body believes, and we have to take a moment and consider, if we bring back stressful events or think about stressful future events all the time, when we're maybe in a space where we can't do anything about that, then we actually activate that stress response, which means it moves us away from a baseline relaxed state, which is our state of high performance readiness. High performance energy gets channeled for the physical stress response, and our problem solving brain, which is the one that we always need for these situations, actually we see low activity there. And then when we practice mindfulness, we see it switch over again, because mindfulness is really paying present being completely present, paying attention to incoming information without judgment, without action or reaction. It's objective observation to make sense of it. So when you think about resilience requires the bouncing back after a challenge. So it's the absorption of that challenge, but also then bouncing forward, adapting to it, right? Saying that, what have I learned from this? And mindfulness allows us to make sense, right, in a non-reactive way about what's happening. Can I observe what I'm feeling? What action or reaction can I choose that is most appropriate for this situation without going into the default mode of, previously learned associations? And I think in that sense, it's really valuable. There's many studies showing the physiological benefits of mindfulness, right? Lowering blood pressure, improving immunity, improving sleep, etc. There are even more studies that show the psychological benefits, reducing anxiety, reducing stress, all of those things. But what I always love to quote Sam Harris, who's a neuroscientist and a philosopher and a mindfulness expert, and he always says, well, it's like asking someone if they play the violin for its blood pressure lowering properties, and they would probably say, no way. It means so much more than that. And I think that is what we also need to understand about mindfulness, that it's really about that space of realization, right? That our emotional reactions are really driven by physiological manifestations that are impermanent and passing, and we don't have to be bound by them, right? And we don't have to suffer because of them. And I think that's really important. And then when you look at long-term meditators, who are these gurus, right? These Eastern gurus, these Buddhist monks, who actually spend thousands of hours practicing mindfulness. If you look at the structure of their brains in an fMRI scan, and there's some interesting studies that they actually did on Buddhist monks, you see mindfulness activates specifically centers related to empathy, compassion, self-compassion. We also see in these expert meditators an enlargement of the insula, which is the part of your brain that actually integrates emotional, sensory, and cognitive information. So in a sense, it allows you to really exert control over that default mode and decide what is really important now, and how can I, apply my resources and my energy towards the right action or reaction. And at the same time, I'm cultivating a deeper empathy and self-compassion, right? And I'm able to integrate the emotional information and sensory information that comes in more adequately over time. And as you can see, those are already speaking to team connectedness, right? The connection and the social safety and the collective creativity within a team. Because in mindfulness, when you look at brain activation, it's this hybrid state of relaxation, but with mental alertness. So low stress response, high creativity. So I think I've already said a lot there that can tell you about the benefits of it. And as you said, leaders say we don't have time for this, but also in a busy, busy world where everything is asking for our attention all the time, it's very difficult to just sit and apply meditative practice, as a starting point. Many people struggle with it. And I think what's really important is to understand what it is that you'd like to achieve through mindfulness, and what other ways there are to actually access it. You don't have to always just sit and practice mindful meditation. Perhaps it's catching little time traveling thoughts in your day, having a little mindful connection at the beginning of a team meeting, enticing curiosity, bringing something to the table that gets all the members of your team saying, oh, what's happening here? I'm interested. Because mindfulness is exactly that, bringing curiosity to everything. And you have to be present to be curious, right?
So bringing in the team, and check-in activities, bringing curiosity to them, like in the beginning of the meeting, putting an agenda, bringing their mindset to what's happening in the now within the team, and connecting with themselves and the others around them. This is how mindfulness can be practiced in the team. So now we came a little bit to the how. And I believe that there is, talking about how Neurozone is looking at mindfulness, and I saw mindfulness in many parts of the report, Like it's like appearing in many different parts, but it has its place in the model itself. You want to talk about that, like in the model?
Yeah, so as I said earlier, mindfulness is as a meditative practice where we actually set time aside every single day, as we would for exercise, as we would prioritize how we sleep and how we eat. It's a high performance rhythm because we have to set a daily rhythm of mindfulness meditative practice. And then over time, as you practice it repetitively, just like everything else, those pathways that activate when we actually practice mindfulness, they become stronger. Because if we think about neuronal pathways and brain pathways, repetitive action strengthens those pathways. And over time, they become more accessible because they are becoming stronger. And then over time, as we continuously activate that state of mind, we start moving it to a trait of mind, and it becomes a high-performance transformer, right? So you can see transformers there at the bottom. Transformers speak to mindset, belief systems, the way my system's awareness. Do I understand that I'm one that's part of a larger system? And mindfulness trait is a mindset transformer, because if I practice it repetitively, I'm able to have that, access that present state. Say if I encounter a stressful situation at work, or the team maybe didn't meet their goals and we're all a little bit in trouble, maybe we can take a moment, take a deep breath. The physical response of breathing deeply already drives a more relaxed state, and then focus on the present, help to keep the stress response at bay and activate the creative centers to say, okay, this is quite a stressful situation, but I'm not running from a tiger anymore, right? There are no tigers, there are no dinosaurs now. I need to access my prefrontal cortex, my innovative brain, and that's what we see. So mindfulness as a daily rhythm starts becoming a transformer, but then by practicing mindfulness, it allows us to really access our innovative brain. So it's an innovator as well in our model, because then we see low stress response and high prefrontal cortex activity, problem-solving brain lights up. But at the same time, as I've just mentioned, we see regions associated with empathy, compassion, self-compassion, and purpose, and belonging, and meaning. All those things also light up, which means it also connects us. It's also a connector. So you can see it's ticking all the boxes of the model already. It just links to all of these. And then mindfulness also allows us to promote more energy boosting behaviors. So it's a high performance energy domain as well, because it allows us to practice gratitude, cultivate optimism and curiosity. And those are energy boosting behaviors. I have to take a mindful moment to take stock of what I have, so I can be grateful for that. And that's an example, practicing team gratitude. It's a way to practice, a component of mindfulness. If we as a team can sit together and say, wow, this past week, maybe we dropped the ball, we didn't really access that, hit that goal that we were intended to, what mistakes did we make, what lessons did we learn from it, and what can we be grateful for? And the moment that you do, practice gratitude in a team, maybe, great practice of gratitude is where each member lists one thing that they're grateful for about every other member, and read that to each other. Now they're bonding, they're connecting, but they're also not worried about the future or worried about the past. They're in the present and they're sharing in this gratitude practice, which means you're driving team optimism as well. So it's difficult to isolate it in any of the 5 domains that we have here, because it really, it's linked to all of them. And that's kind of how I would translate the model that way. And if you go onto the Neurozone website, we have some articles on mindfulness in teams. We have a great masterclass on brain attentional networks and mindfulness as well. There's some video links that are all free for view, so everyone can go dive deep into that. And from our own data, maybe we can show some of the data graphs as well. You see, this is some of the data that come from our COVID, data that came in from our assessments. And as you can see, what you really want to aim for is cultivating mindfulness as a trait. But you can only become fit if you exercise every day, right? So you can only cultivate it as a trait if you practice mindful meditation every single day. And as you can see, that as a predictor of resilience, it's a much larger predictor of resilience than just the practice alone, because over time, you want to You want it to transform your mindset. And when you look at some of our...
It doesn't mean that I'm only having mindfulness practices is an indicator of resilience. It's becoming mindful.
Yeah.
You know, it's the state of being mindful. This is what matters. It's not just I go to yoga classes and then I shout everywhere all the day and just I get all the way I'm panicking. It's about being mindful the whole day.
Well, I wouldn't say being mindful the whole day, because we also need to plan for the future. We also need to think about the past. It's about having the ability to access it whenever you need it. And the more you practice it, it is at your disposal. I know I listened to a podcast years ago where Stephen Fry is a British actor. He had a conversation with Sam Harris, and he said, I don't understand this concept of mindfulness. If I think about a cow in a field eating grass all day long, I don't think there's anything more mindful than a cow. And I don't want to be a cow. I want to access all my memories, all my pain and suffering, because I actually bring that forth in my creative space. And it's about not being mindful and present all the time. It's about being able to toggle between the being and the doing, to understand when it serves me well. If I'm in a stressful situation, can I take a few mindful breaths, have that awareness, and then just calm myself and the stress response to be able to answer more creatively and innovatively or problem solve. Right. So it's about having that awareness, and you cultivate that over time, the more you practice mindfulness. And even in coaching, you know, if you give your clients things to do, practices, activities, even looking at exercise, nutrition and sleep, mindfulness allows you to self-measure the doing versus not doing. If I got up today and I did my exercise routine, if I take a mindful moment and reflect on my day at the end of the day and say, well, today I actually went and did my exercise routine, and I could see it play out in the way that I performed at work, and my mood state, and my relationships. I had more energy in my day. Now I'm telling my brain this exercise routine is really good for me, not just because it keeps me healthy, but it ticks many boxes that are important to me. Mindfulness allows us to take that moment and measure that and say, you know, what is the doing versus not doing of this habit? How is it impacting my life? And that impacts where the energy goes. It impacts high performance energy. The topic we had discussion on the last time we had an interview. It's about what the brain pays attention to and how that impacts where the energy goes, and the role that mindfulness plays in that is a very critical role.
Wow. Hey, that's deep. So thank you. And what does this curve talk to us about? You know,
So this is also just a previous graph from our COVID data as well. Also just showing that mindfulness is a practice. It's the purple line, and then you see trait mindfulness, just how it correlates, with these important behaviors. And as you can see, trait mindfulness really helps to build optimism, reduce negative thought patterns, improve sleep, meaning in work life, entrustment in team, entrustment speaking to bonding as team members. And it makes sense if you think about, if you're going to have a present state of mind and focus on the present, you're occupying space that could be spent on negative thought patterns that may not be serving you well, but it's eating away your performance energy. Right. And if you think about meaning in work life and entrustment and bonding in team, we know those are the regions that light up our empathy regions, understanding each other and connecting ourselves deeper. So this is from individual assessment data that we've, aggregated together. And then the next graph you can show is from our team assessment specifically. It's a smaller cohort. If you can go to the last graph, the orange lines, the third one. Yes, there we go. So this is from our team report related data specifically. It's a smaller cohort. It's a while ago. But can you see the same kind of patterns? And we specifically looked at how trait mindfulness versus just the practice of mindfulness correlates with our connectors, our social safety and collective creativity. And again, you see a big correlation with meaning in work life, identity in team, my belonging in team, entrustment in team. All these things are really important for team connectedness. So again, not saying that now leave the meditative practice behind. It's important to remember you need that to become mindful fit, right? If I'm going to exercise regularly, I'm going to be more mobile in my day and get up and move around a lot and have that energy, right? And it's impacting a lot of other things. And that's how I would probably position mindfulness as a practice versus a trait, a state of mind versus a trait of mind.
Well, that's like very insightful, and yeah, I can see the correlation is perfect. Like, just for those who don't understand a lot about statistics, I believe the correlation is perfect when it's one, like right. So, and I believe that these factors are all coming in the report of Neurozone, like the cognitive empathy, affective empathy, meaning in work-life balance, identity in team, belonging in team, entrustment in team, competitive collaboration, are all measured with the team assessment that you have. And looking at having the trait and selecting when to get into that is something I believe that leaders have to embody. And the modern leader has to really look at their own mindfulness and how they actually are reflecting this on their teams and bringing this in their leadership. And I believe that this brings into action, or brings into importance, the importance of coaching or neuroscience coaching. And I believe that there's space here actually to introduce what Neurozone is offering when it comes to coaching practice, when it comes to the neuroscience, leadership. So this is actually the title of our
Thank you. Yes, I mean, I have to just stress that the data graphs I showed they were on smaller cohorts, right? We've got more data coming in now, but it's about understanding the trends that we continuously see over the past few years. We see the same trend, and it's cultivating mindfulness as a trait, mindfulness as teams, it needs to start at leadership. Exactly. Leadership needs to be buying into this. They need to educate their workforce. What are we talking about when we see mindfulness? What other ways there are to cultivate mindfulness in teams apart from just doing yoga, which is still beneficial, doing yoga and doing just deep breathing and all of that. But what are the creative ways? And have all the members co-create together and then check in with each other. Can we experiment and then measure and see, well, okay, since we've started implementing this into the team, just maybe a 5-minute checking and curiosity moment at the beginning of a meeting, how does it impact the creative output of those meetings? We have to always measure that and reflect and say, how did this impact it, right? So that it can become part of the language and culture of an organization. And then over time, the more benefits we consciously link to practicing mindful meditative, activities and meetings, our brains start saying, this is really important. I now prioritize it even higher and higher in terms of my performance energy. And it becomes a high performance habit. And that's what it is in the end. Mindfulness, just like exercise, just like eating well, just like sleeping well, it's a high performance habit that we need to cultivate every single day of our lives.
Thank you, Chrisna. I believe that now we have about 2 minutes to go, and and I would love to ask you about your program and your next cohort for the neuroscience coaching. If you want to maybe do some,
So we run a program that I facilitate the practical portion of as well for coaches and actually for leaders as well that would like to come and really integrate these principles of neuroscience, this framework that is data driven and code driven by our behavioral code into the way that they coach, into the way that they guide clients, and I think the next cohort starts the 27th of September, but you're welcome to reach out to me directly. I think you've already shared my email. If anyone would like to learn more about it, or you can visit our website as well. All the information is on there. In the training program, this is exactly what we do, is we look at brain performance from basic to sophisticated, and what are these behavioral states and cognitive states and emotional states that really impact building resilience for high performance. And what's interesting about our framework, it's all about action and what are the things that we need to do, and they go really well with personality assessments and other tools that coaches use. I always people love to hear who they are and why they are the way they are. And I believe Neurozone tells you, okay, great, if this is the way you are, maybe you can do this. These are the things that you actually can implement every day, the actions that you can implement and prioritize to ensure that you remain resilient. Right, in the face of all the variables that we are faced with every single day. So that's kind of the gist of our program, and you're welcome to reach out if anyone is interested.
So I believe that's amazing, and thank you actually for bringing all of this wisdom and through the 3 episodes that we had. And I'm really looking forward for more sharing in the future. Just let's see what will happen, and hopefully also for for my clients, I believe that it's great news that currently we have. We can provide you with that. I tested the Neurozone team report with a client, and it really made a huge difference in how we look at the challenges and what needs to be done, and with the client, and putting an action plan, and even getting this out of the team through team coaching. It was really amazing. It's a very powerful tool when it comes to measuring what needs to be done and what needs to be prioritized. So thank you, Chrisna. Thank you, the team from Neurozone actually for sharing this generously throughout the last 3 sessions. And I believe we will put a special post, that will integrate the 3 episodes so that they have a build up together. Thank you for your time. Do you like to say a final word for everyone before closing?
Well, thank you. No, I think I really enjoyed this, and I'm sure we'll see each other again. There's lots to unpack in the space of neuroscience and coaching, and neuroscience and leadership, and the leader as the coach. And I believe this framework really speaks well to that. And final word on mindfulness. I think there's a big mindfulness guru that said, any is better than none. If you can brush your teeth more mindfully, if you can drive mindfully, every single time that you have a mindful moment and bring yourself to the present, you are activating those pathways, and repetition over time will strengthen them. So just start catching those time-traveling thoughts in the course of your day, and soon you'll be on your way ready to actually practice some deep meditation, which is when the real benefits, the deep exercise that will build that resilience and help us to cultivate it as a trait.
Thank you, Chrisna. And I appreciate your time. And for those who really want to make a difference with their team, actually using the Neurozone reports and actually using this methodology in coaching actually will bring a lot of value, to the team resilience and energy, especially with the pain that we're having all these days that I'm hearing from everyone, with the energy, with stress that's everywhere, with anxiety. People are suffering because of the different world conditions. Keep up, with all of this, and be on top of that. And Neurozone and their reports and their practices will be your friend. So thank you, everyone, and thank you, Chrisna, and have a great day. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.